Joining us now, we're really thrilled and honored, the filmmaker Faiza Almontaser, and her brother-in-law Jamiel Altaheri, who is a New York City police captain. You are the highest-ranking Yemeni American in the New York Police Department. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. All right, Faiza, to you, because this is an incredible piece of work. You were 17 years old when you shot it. It's been 3 years since you originally took the idea on and you started to shoot this on the streets of New York City. But we want to talk about the documentary, but first I want to get your reaction to this travel ban that the president has just issued.
Well, it's kind of tough. I have families back home, and it's kind of tough for all of us because if people try to come from so many different countries just to run away from wars, to run away from all this mess that's been going on overseas, and they're stuck. They cannot come. Like a lot of people just sell everything they have, their houses, their homes, just to get those plane tickets, and then when they're at the airports, they can't come, and that's because they're from a country they're trying to escape all that war that they're facing.
And it's interesting because you had it better than some. I mean, you came from a family that was fairly, I won't say well-to-do, but was better off than a lot of the people we've seen, for example, trying to escape what's happening in Syria or in some other countries where you see the horrific images of children washed up on beaches or children sitting in a refugee camp with both of their parents having passed away and just trying to get to a place where they're not seeing bombs and hearing bombs raining down on their roofs every day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very thankful that actually I came in before there was a war from Yemen, but the purpose was to come here was to have a better education. My dad was very serious about that. He wanted us to have a better lives. It wasn't good back then either in terms of economics, the education system, and that was the reason why we came here. But now it's very intimidating that it's just a lot of mess has been happening there. We see kids dying every day, and it's sad you can't do nothing about it.
Captain, you're one of about 1,000 Muslim police officers in a force of 36,000. Ultimately, some of your law enforcement colleagues, and whether they are in the NYPD or the Customs and Border Protection or ICE, will have to enforce this ban. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, like the commissioner said, I think the mayor as well, we're here to protect everyone regardless of their immigration status.
And so, but just as somebody who knows what it's like to be an immigrant, somebody who knows what it's like to go through the process of trying to come to this country and assimilate either yourself or your children or however it may be, just on a personal note, how does it feel to know that this is going to make perhaps your job a little difficult in the sense that you're going to have these questions that you're facing every single day, these decisions that you have to make every single day?
I look at the challenges as hopefully opportunities to actually build more bridges with those specific communities. I know a lot of members of my community, especially in the Yemen community, are very concerned because it does impact them directly, but I hope to be a bridge for that community and also for the NYPD.
That's great. All right, Faiza, first of all, I've got to commend you on how well you shot this piece. I mean, you were 17 years old. You're framing the interviewees. You're framing your shots better than I could probably. So I just want to get a sense from you of your inspiration, the reason that what sort of inspired you to tell this story as a documentary filmmaker at such a young age.
Well, honestly, it started with poetry. When I was in middle school, as you all watched in the documentary film I made, I was always bullied and I was always in the spotlight and I was just hiding in the corners of the class trying to be hidden. But then it was due to my ASL teacher, she just gave me a pen and paper, said, here, write a poem. And then I found my way through poetry where I could have my voice heard. And then when I went to high school, I did it through spoken word poetry, where I just honestly loved it more than anything. And then, because of my spoken word poetry, I did it in different schools, in different art expos, where I had a lot of, thousands of people there watching my spoken word poetry in my workshops. And that's how I got to the film. And film, I feel like you discover your talents through whatever you do. These kind of things make you discover new talents about yourself. And film has been an amazing experiment.
You mention, and you talk about this in the film, about being bullied when you were younger. What was that like?
Pain. honestly. As a kid, that's the worst thing you could ever face. It's really bad because I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't want to make my family like more frustrated than they were already. They kind of had an idea that I just hated school. I would make excuses, just I'm sick, mom, I don't want to go to school, and just to stay home. And it's like a nightmare. I honestly cried every time, like before I went to sleep, thinking about my next day, how horrible it was going to be.
And the kids who would bully you, knowing what you know now, understanding the things that you understand at this point in your life, what do you think that they were thinking? I mean, generally that kind of stuff isn't taught, but how do kids, is it just because you were wearing the hijab and people thought that that was strange, or is it because you were Yemeni, but you grew up in Brooklyn where everybody's seemingly an immigrant? So I'm just trying to get a sense of who they were and how you feel about them today.
Well, I came to America in 2006. My school, I was the only hijabi, meaning I was the only girl that wore the hijab. And I was also the only Arab, beside my ESL teacher at that time. They found me very different. First of all, I did not speak English. Second of all, I had the scarf. And they always had negative ideas about Muslims, because they would ask me why the hijab or something, and I would explain, oh, I am a Muslim, and being a Muslim appear to them as like a terrorist, or that's the kind of words I always got.
It's so interesting. We were talking about this earlier. I grew up in Queens, and there were young. I remember there was a guy in my class who was a Sikh, and I never thought to ask him what he was wearing. You know, maybe because I was an immigrant. I'm a first-generation American. Maybe because I also felt as an outsider. And but it's just interesting that today it feels as if kids are more, I guess, willing to ask questions like that, or even take it to the next level, which is bullying.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would love it. Ask me questions as much as you want. Even now, I don't take that as a problem at all. Ask me as many questions as you want. I would be happy to explain it to you. But just don't jump into conclusions and call me names. That's just wrong.
Jamiel, in the documentary, you say you don't. This is, I thought, was one of the most compelling lines in the documentary. You say to the camera that you don't want to let the media define what Islam is, what being a Muslim American is. Give me a little more sense into what you were thinking when you made that statement.
I think a lot of times we, as communities, we naturally react or respond to other people's accusations or determinations of what Islam is. And what I say is to the Muslim community is, you have to begin to speak up for your community and for your religion. A lot of times we only hear about the extremists or the terrorists that represent our faith wrongly. So I'm here to tell the moderate, peaceful, loving Muslims to stand up and reclaim your faith.
Is it difficult, and I'll ask this of both of you, is it difficult when, for example, in movies or in television, Islam is depicted in one way, when you have certain people who are politicians that, blanket the entire religion, 1 and almost 500 million people in the world who practice this religion are somehow tainted with the brush of being radical or being somehow affiliated with some of the heinous things that we see in some other countries. How does that make you feel?
It's really, sad, because, if you really look at the number of Muslims around the world, if you were to think that they're all terrorists, this world will be like literally on fire. But this is just a little groups that just make Islam seem so terrible, and unfortunately that's what's been showing a lot in the media, which is wrong. And I'll say, just meet a Muslim, and if you have questions, ask a Muslim. Don't just listen to what, all the negative ideas you have. They're in every religion, in every culture. You're going to find people that have some ideas that you will not agree with, and it's not just Muslim, and it's not just Arab.
What about you?
And I always tell a lot of my Jewish and Christian friends when I speak in synagogues or churches that I ask them, do you know what a Muslim means? A Muslim is someone who's in service to God. And you can't serve God unless you serve God's creations. And the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that a Muslim is one whose tongue and hands people are at peace. So that's the definition of a Muslim, which goes contrary and it contradicts what the extremists are saying Islam is, and that's not our faith.
Faiza, one of the things that I'm always curious about is we watch this film through your eyes and experience what you were going through and what some of your peers are going through. But sometimes what gets lost in these stories that we tell, those of us who have family and parents that came from other countries, is their story. The things that you went through, I don't think it's hard to imagine, and I don't know this, that's why I'm asking, that perhaps your parents, your father or your mother, experienced some of the very same things that you experienced. It's not just kids that get bullied who are immigrants.
Definitely. I mean, I get it even till now. I get stared at when I'm in the train and my mom, there's an incident where someone tries to pull off her scarf, and my dad, his name was Muhammad. I mean, you have a lot of people that approach you in a very negative way. I mean, until now, it's not just about back in middle school, which is more difficult for me when I was back in middle school because, first of all, I was still very young, you know, and I had no language, but now I do. And even though, like, even if I have these approaches towards me, it doesn't hurt me as much because I kind of understand, like, to put myself away from these things, to, like, reply, answer, just show people the right picture of you.
And for your parents?
For my parents too, honestly. We had a huge house in Yemen. We lived a really good life. And to come here, and we wanted a good education, and were bullied. And of course, my parents, they get this all the time. My parents, my brothers. But, you know, you just have to explain yourself in the best way you can. Because Islam does not, Islam is not what it is explained in the media.
And you talk about feeling at home here in the United States. Your dad also talks about that.
Definitely.
Do you feel at home now?
Definitely. I felt home, and I've always felt that New York especially is my home. I mean, it's the melting pot. I find my friends, I find my Spanish friends, my American friends, my Christian, my Jewish friends, everybody. That's the kind of world that I love to live in. And that's home for me.
Jamiel, I think it's also interesting to see, I was telling you that I just am doing some reporting on the New York Police Department and some of the training that the NYPD is going through, just how different the face of the New York Police Department has changed in just the last 10 or 15 years, where, you know, going back to when I was a child, it was pretty homogenous. Yeah. And now you go into neighborhoods and you see police officers that look just like you and me. Wow. What's that like for you? To know that you're not alone. I mean, even though you're the highest ranking Yemeni American, there are others coming up behind you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great feeling. I think New York City should be proud. I think the police force should reflect the communities they serve. And so NYPD is doing just that, and I think we've become a better, more efficient department because our diversity makes us a lot more stronger and efficient. And it's a good thing, not only for us as a police department, but for New York City. I
want to ask you guys a question. It's something that, you know, that is, I think everybody who has family or who is born in another country faces, which is that time, that moment when feeling at home and being an American sometimes contradicts with family or family members. In other words, for example, when I joined the military, my parents were like, why are you doing that? You know, in their minds, this is a place for an opportunity and for an education, but you don't want to go and do like that, right? And I wonder if that happened to you, where you said, look, I feel so American, I feel so assimilated and integrated into this society that I'm going to do something that, you know, I probably might not have thought of doing before, which is join the NYPD.
Since I was a young boy, I always wanted to be a cop, and something I grew up with loving, seeing police officers on the street and watching cop shows and being a mediator. But my parents, obviously, they try to gear me to business management or accounting or be a lawyer, but I followed my dreams, and I'm glad I did it.
What about you, Faiza? Have you come to that point where some of the things that you feel about this country sometimes maybe in contradiction to family members?
No, not at all. My parents have been supportive through everything I've been doing. And yes,
geez, I wish I had those kind of parents. I'm just kidding, Mom, if you're watching.
No, honestly, I have those supportive parents and the family members that were supporting me through everything that I've been doing. And I wish I could do anything more for America. And America has been my home. And I've lived in the U.S. more than I lived back home.
Before we wrap this up, as we look at, for example, protests that have happened over the course of the last month or so since the first travel ban issued by the president, and now we have a new one today, what's your sense on the protests that you're seeing? How does it make you feel? Are you participating? Just give me a sense of that.
Well, honestly, I know what America stands about. I know that this is the land of the free, and I know that this is we have our Constitution that protects everyone in the United States. And I had emails, honestly, from teachers and professors that would keep in touch with me and ask me if things were going well with me, if I ever needed anything. So I honestly, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with, whatever it's been happening with politics, and but I do love to see change, and I know that America does not stands for, like, America is based on immigration, and it's good to help and not build walls between people.
Before we wrap this up, we've got about 20 seconds or so. You wanted to read one of your poems. If you want, go ahead and pull it up on your phone if you have it. Do you have your phone, or do you think you can memorize it? You know you have memorized it.
I have some, but
yeah, go ahead and lay some poetry on us.
Okay, so a new one, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay, so one. Okay, so that thing on her head is the title of the poem. That thing on her. Look at that thing on her head. Look at that thing on her head. These girls are always oppressed. Their men are their masters, and if they don't obey them, they're beaten to death. I wonder if she wears it when she goes to shower or even goes to bed. But don't you think these girls are way too beautiful to be covered from toe to head? I mean, she's lucky even to go to class and listen to music instead. But hey, you never know. She's part of a racist group, the other one said. But don't you know she might have a bomb under that thing under her head? Well, assalamu alaikum. Please, don't you worry. It means peace be upon you. So don't be frustrated. I am. Okay, I'll just stop it.
That was great. Thank you very much for sharing that. That was really cool. Thank you, Faiza. We appreciate it. Thank you both for being here with us. Yeah, that was great. Fantastic.